It's not like, hey, insurance company, we've got a contract for this hip replacement. You're supposed to pay us $30,000. Where's our check? No, it rarely works like that. The insurer says, yeah, you did it. Okay, we're not going to pay it. Sue us. The number one rule of healthcare contracts is you can't talk about healthcare contracts. And so we are in an inefficient market. And so the first step is, how do you make it efficient so that everybody has equal access to information?
The problem sucks. What's the solution?
You got to see the scale of how much they're losing as a provider. So we've got the default rate, we've got the time value of money and the opportunity cost, and then you've got the cost associated with fighting once for the 86% that gets approved. So on the 86% that gets approved, it's not like, hey, insurance company, we've got a contract for this hip replacement. You're supposed to pay us $30,000. Where's our check? No, it rarely works like that. The insurer says, yeah, you did it. Okay, we're not going to pay it. Sue us. Or, okay, we're not going to pay it now. We think it should have been 37,000 minus, should have been 35,000.
Or you sent in the claim and it was missing a note. Or you sent in the claim and you sent it in a day late.
You're not supposed to send them on Thursday.
The difference between net and gross is still meaningful. I've yet to meet a single healthcare business that gets paid what it charges.
So the question becomes, how much is that? And it's between 2 and 3% typically for every single provider. And so if you have a big hospital network that does tens of billions of dollars in revenue, that's a big ass number.
Yeah.
And so now the question becomes, how do you take that default and cost responsibility away from the provider? And then how do you price what's left, and who should get paid and rewarded for all that? So there's a lot of different ways to think about this. And this is the hard part.
Before you answer how, I want to quickly squeeze in why. So you're Mark Cuban and you've just sold the Mavs, and you have built a wonderful media platform that you sold to Yahoo, and you're on Shark Tank, or were on Shark Tank, and you're politically active. You've got a lot of things going on. And all of a sudden, this thing called healthcare, Mr. and Mrs. Healthcare, the couple, they walk into your house and they park themselves on your sofa and they say, we're just full of idiosyncrasies. We're a riddle wrapped in an enigma on top of a paradox. Would you like to spend the next few years inside of this? And you say, sign me up. Why?
Yeah, of course.
Why?
Yeah, because
what grabbed you?
What's more rewarding than fucking up this healthcare system that everybody hates?
I feel the same way. I've spent the last 15 years.
Right?
I have to imagine that if I just sold the Mavs.
Well, no, I mean, look, I'm really competitive. Why do I do anything? Why do I keep on doing these things? I want my kids to be healthy. I want to spend time with them. I want to go to Mavs games, and I want to compete. I want to do things other people haven't done or can't do or say isn't possible. And that's fun for me.
And it sounds like price transparency, the ability to compare value offerings from supplier A versus all the other suppliers, is an underlying theme, like a principal theme.
Not on value, because value implies that there's a benchmark for what something should cost. Having transparency for actual costs that are negotiated makes a market efficient. There's so many markets that are very, very, very efficient, where we don't think twice. The market for stocks are, for the most part, efficient. There's, you can argue some things, but when you look at the price of the stock market, you're like, okay, I'm going to negotiate. No, this is the price. You might wait for it to go up or down, but it's pretty efficient. And, it's priced down to the decimals. Crypto is another market that's close to efficient, because you have access to all your data that you need to make a decision.
The question is, can we commoditize healthcare?
No, it's not about commoditizing it, right? A company.
Can we standardize healthcare?
Well, not even standardizing. There are some things we can talk about there, right? So the question becomes, what are the places where we can simplify healthcare to make it more efficient and more transparent? And that's the ultimate question. That's not easy.
It's not easy, but you would still think plenty of low-hanging fruit.
Well, so when we walk into
30 years ago, we weren't close to this anywhere. But
no,
with the introduction
literally,
of
you want to go back to 1955 is what you want to do. That's the best way to think about it. When you walk to the doctor says it's $50, and you can either give $50 or give him 2 chickens, because that's what you have, and it's worth more than $50, right? You go to the hospital says, this is the cost. Can you afford it? No, then we'll put you on a payment plan because we want to get you healthy and we're willing to take on that obligation. But now there's an arms race, among providers, that there's a branding race among providers. They want to be an MD Anderson. They want to be a Mayo. They want to be a UPMC. They want to be an HCA, UT Southwest, Baylor Scott White. Branding matters, and they spend a boatload of money on that branding because they compete for clients or for patients. And there's really just two ways that you get, three ways, but for the most part, two primary ways. That's through your contract with insurance companies, because they cover millions of lives, and that's your sales funnel, or by all the advertising.
In a tight network with high deductibles and very little out-of-network support, they're going to control the foot traffic.
And that's an issue in a lot of respects for Medicare Advantage and other things. But let's go back to the provider.
Yeah.
So now I walk into the provider and I say, starting just with the lives that we cover, right, for my employees and their families, here's what I want to do as part of a direct contract. I want to do a deal with you where there are no pre-authorizations. I'm going to trust you. You're my doctors. And, we're going to have data. I'm going to have all the claims data. So if I see something happening, I'm going to be all over you about it. If there's all of a sudden 50.
So this is a self-insured option, right? Fully funded by the employer. Contract. You got a green light to provide the care that you think is appropriate. Okay.
Exactly.
I'm following you.
So that's part one. Part two is I'm paying you cash immediately. You're not waiting for anything. Part three is there are no deductibles, no out-of-pocket responsibilities that you have with any of my employees or their families.
Okay.
We'll take all of that. So effectively, you're getting paid everything that you're due, which leads to the question of what are you going to charge us? And what we're saying is, it might be, we've had some situations where it's 80% of Medicare if it's truly a commodity, 100% of Medicare if it's close to a commodity, 120% if it's more advanced, 150% in one case if it's super specialty, 250%. But here's the catch, because they're all interested, right? Because they know all the associated overhead, all the administrative costs that you know about, all the revenue consultants that they have to have, all the efficiency consultants, all the AI they're looking in investing. But I'm saying, here's the one thing you're going to feel most uncomfortable with that's the most important. We're publishing these contracts. Every contract we do with you, we're publishing online on costpluswellness.com at some point in 2025 after everything's signed up, so that everybody gets to see them. Because if we're truly going to change healthcare in this country and you want to reduce your dependency on the BUCAs, the big insurance companies, and you want to stop that battle you have to face taking on the credit responsibility for the BUCAs in some respects and the patients, this is the path. And so this is what we're going to do. And we're getting yeses. And we're doing this. And now going back to that comment I made about single payer.
Are you getting yeses from groups that feel like their pricing helps their branding because they are part of the bent cost curve?
No, there's expensive. There's expensive groups, right? Where they're premium. There's some that are premium, and there's some that, the imaging and stuff like that, where they're price competitive in what's mostly a commodity. So it's across the spectrum.
What motivates the CEO to say yes, who's premium?
Because they want to to premium?
The CEO who's premium, who's most expensive, premium.
Why would they say yes to us?
Yes.
Because they want to change the system. They know the system's wrong, and they're betting that once these contracts become published, all the self-insured employers are going to read them and potentially come out and self-contract. Now, I don't know exactly how many lives are covered. I've read one number, 180 million. I've read another number, 50 million. I don't know which is which, but whichever, it's a
big
lot.
Number.
Yeah, it's a big number. And so that's a new sales bundle which reduces their dependency on the BUCAs. Because the reality is the insurance companies, other than for some small group insurance and some direct contracts, they take no insurance risk whatsoever. Everything else is subsidized at one level or another or paid for by an external payer. And so now, hopefully, this gets the ball rolling towards a more efficient market.
You mentioned this. This has come up that health insurance companies, they don't really experience the kind of volatility you see with other insurance products like property and casualty.
Yeah, because they're subsidized.
During COVID, profits went up, not down. That was an interesting.
Well, people didn't go to the doctors a lot, and that explains.
Utilization went down.
Yeah, utilization went way down, and now it's popped back up, and they're losing some money there. But that aside,
do think, I will say this, I see in healthcare technology being a great example. And my journey into healthcare technology is recent, right? I spent the first decade of these 15 years really focused on the operations, the guts. And this wave of new, faster, cheaper, better alternatives is pretty recent. But I still think that different segments of healthcare will adopt it at a faster pace than others. So,
yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, look, there's always early adopters in every segment.
Payers are interesting too. So payers are not providers, they're financiers. And you have different segments of payers. You have government payer, you have large commercial insurance payer, monopolistic payer, you have interlocker payer, right? You have the managers, the ACOs, the IPAs, the brokers, and then you have self-insured. I do think this self-insured marketplace, and you would know better than me, because I think with Cost Plus, by the way, great name, Mark Cuban, Cost Plus, right?
Right, one inch name.
I do think you would know better than me, but it might be the fastest adopter of, and the most performance-seeking segment within the payer community, which is one of the reasons, by the way, why I like diversity, because someone's always faster than everyone else when you have diversity.
Yeah.
And you need that fast segment. You need the early adopter to test stuff.
For sure. So when I walk into a CEO's office, it's like, okay, do you want your employees to be healthier? Sure. Do you want to save money? Sure. Okay, you ready to sign up?
That's the pitch. That's the pitch.
No catch.
You had me at that.
There's no catch. You know, why don't you do this? Let's start on the pharmacy side with Cost Plus. Go back to your PBM and ask them for a copy of all your claims. And for each claim, ask them for the price of the medication that was associated with that claim, what you paid, because self-insured payer. Unless you have 50,000 lives covered or more, you're not getting that information.
Vagueness, slowness, built on years of oligopolistic behavior.
Thank you for joining us on Analyzing Healthcare. Stay informed and stay inspired. Don't forget to subscribe and visit scale-community.com to become a Scale Community member. Until next time, keep exploring the ideas that shape our healthcare systems.